Time under tension, or TUT, does not cause muscle growth. It does not cause it. It can be correlated with muscle growth, but what really causes muscle growth is mechanical tension. And for anyone that's not familiar with what that actually means, it's the involuntary slowing of, let's say, the speed of the bar. So if you're doing a squat or a bench press, as that set gets tougher and tougher, and you need to do 10 reps and you're on number 7 and that bar is not moving as fast, the degree of mechanical tension is much higher. And that is what elicits hypertrophy or strength gains.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Danny Bossa podcast. I'm joined again with a good friend, Robbie Bennett from Dublin, Ireland, functional nutrition practitioner. Every time we start the video, I get that one wrong. Functional nutrition practitioner, strength coach and personal trainer, and he's an expert in digestive issues, metabolic issues, food sensitivities, optimizing hormones, nutrition and training, and he is a protege of Dr. Eric Serrano, who is a good friend of both of ours. How you doing, Rob?
Doing very good, thank you.
Good. So we had a quick little chat offline talking about training, trying to achieve efficient training. So I myself work about 12 to 16 hours a day. If you guys are wondering why I'm not doing that many videos, I'm just swamped with work. My business is exploding and I got to prioritize trying to find the little bits of time to record videos and get good guests on like Robbie, trying to find time to train. And typically what I'm doing is I'm working all day long, come downstairs and I'm dead tired. I have some supper and then I wind up walking into my garage, which is transformed into a gym. And obviously, you know, time is of the essence. I don't have a heck of a lot of time to be doing this. I can put a little bit of time every day. And I've been trying to figure out the most efficient method for, you know, say a guy my age, I'm 49 years old. I'd like to put on some muscle mass. I don't necessarily want to get huge. And my goal has never been jacked on steroids. A lot of people watch my TRT videos and like, how is it that he's taking this huge dose and he doesn't look like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever else. That's not, that's never been my goal to get huge. So I've been doing essentially, the only thing that really seems to work for me is I split up my body. I've been doing, you know, chest on Mondays, back on Tuesdays, you know, shoulders, arms, shoulders, biceps, triceps on, you know, maybe Thursdays, legs on Fridays, and kind of rinse and repeat. And I find that if I just spend one day just, you know, hitting a muscle from every single angle, I tend to get better results than just kind of saying I'll do half the amount of sets one day and then, you know, the other half on a different day. What would be, in your opinion, a very efficient way of training for a guy like me, business guy, doesn't have a lot of time, wants to be in shape, and just wants to make sure that he's getting the best bang for his buck for the amount of time he's spending in the gym?
Okay, so first off, Danny, when we go to the gym and we're lifting weights, the result should be we want to build new muscle. A lot of time people make the mistake of when they're working out is they want to burn as many calories as possible. That should not be the result of going into the gym. That's number one. Now, based on the training split that you're telling me, that seems like it's more of a kind of a bodybuilding training split where it's you work one muscle group, you take a rest, okay, the next day you work a different muscle group. And what I would say about that is when we look at the overall weekly or bi-weekly training frequency of the muscle, the frequency is quite low. So I would say that's actually suboptimal for, let's say, positive body composition changes. So what I would say is we need to look at three main factors when we're prescribing any sort of training program. One is the frequency. So how often a week you're training in general and how often you're training a specific body group. So it might be quads or hamstrings or chest or so on. That's one factor. Then we need to look at volume. Volume is the amount of sets, the amount of reps you're doing of a certain muscle group. And the last thing we look at is effort. How hard someone's training in the gym. Are they training like a little bit of a wimp, or are they training 10 out of 10 intensity? That's going to impact it. Now, we can't have effort, volume, and intensity all 10 out of 10. Because if we do, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get an injury. And the biggest thing that stops someone from making progress in the gym is injury and illness. So what I would say is, for you, I would say we need a bit more training frequency on the same muscle group. So that might look like you're training 4 days a week, for instance. And you've got an upper body day, which would consist of chest, shoulders, biceps, triceps, and back on a Monday. Then we'd have a legs day, which would be quads, glutes, hamstrings, calves, and a bit of maybe abs on the Tuesday. You rest, and then we repeat a similar workout on the Thursday, Friday, and we rest over the weekend. So I like 2 days on, 1 day off. That's one scenario we can do. Now, if you said to me, you know, Robbie, I absolutely despise that, another scenario would be that we would do a chest and posterior chain like hamstrings and glutes day 1, and then day 2 we might do back and quads. So there's multiple ways you can split it up, but I think frequency definitely needs to be increased.
Okay, all right. So just so the hitting one body part per week really kind of.
I don't think it's enough, because by the time you come back around, like, you have so much more opportunities during the week to synthesize new growth in that tissue, and it's not happening.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other tips in regarding efficient use of time?
So I like a training method known as peripheral heart activation, or sometimes it was popularized as a German body composition by a strength coach by the name of Charles Poliquin. And essentially what it means is you can do non-traditional supersets. So superset would be going from one exercise to a second exercise. Mm-hmm. Traditionally, it's done where you go from a chest exercise to another chest exercise. But peripheral heart activation just means you have blood flow in your upper body and you're pushing it to the lower extremities and vice versa. So doing GBC style programs where you might do, let's say, a chin up, you rest 45 seconds into a squat, and you go back between stations. I think that's a great way to be as efficient as possible with your time. And I think that's very beginner, intermediate friendly. And I think the more advanced you get, the less frequency you need with a muscle group, because the intensity or the effort is so high. I think the lower your training age, possibly the more frequency and the more volume you require. Okay.
Because if you're getting advanced and now you're getting into much more intensity, that one set you do of whatever exercise you're going to do, you can't just jump into a different body part. You need to take that rest no matter what. Okay.
That number one, and number two is the amount of weight that's lifted is probably higher than what a beginner would be lifting. So it will have much more demand on the central nervous system and the muscular system. One thing I would mention as well is I think a lot of people change their program far too frequently. So when we think about one of the principles of training, which is the overload principle, it essentially means the stronger we get, we can't lift the same loads we once did. We need to progressively overload the muscle, or we're going to have stagnation. We're not going to make progress. So stick to a training program and progressively overload it. If you're lifting the same weight you did on week 4 that you did on week 1, there's issues. Either you're not training hard enough, or there's some sort of issue structurally with the program. But if you're always changing your exercises, you never know if you're making progress. And I know a lot of people go to the gym as an outlet because they love it and enjoy it. And that's fine, because a lot of people go to the gym and work out socially. But if you're looking to get a specific adaptation or a specific result, like if you go to the doctor and you go, you know what, doctor, I've had all these symptoms, and they go, you know what, pick any drug you want. It's not a specific prescription for the result you're looking for. So there should be specific exercise prescription for the result you're looking to achieve. And if the exercise prescription isn't specific, God knows what results you're going to get, if any.
Another question I've got is, virtually everyone I'm seeing these days are implementing the kind of time under tension, the couple seconds down and 1 second up, and so on and so forth. And frankly, every time I've trained that way, I don't get any kind of pump. I've tried training that way for a couple months, and my body would look absolutely the same. Anytime I start dropping the reps down lower, it's kind of keeping between the 5 to 8 rep range. That's when I start feeling I'm getting a pump. My muscles feel full the next day. I start seeing results in the gym. Could that be based more on genetics? Are there some people that are just better off doing lower reps and heavier weight versus that kind of slower type of training? Like, would someone like that maybe be better off doing the typical, like doing the 5x5s as an alternative?
So when it comes to time under tension, for anyone that's not familiar, it's essentially the time it takes to complete one repetition. So for instance, it's usually prescribed in 4 numbers. So for instance, if it was a 4-0-1-0 tempo, it takes 5 seconds to complete 1 rep. And if that was a squat, it'd be 4 seconds down, no pause, 1 second up. Time under tension, or TUT, does not cause muscle growth. It does not cause it. It can be correlated with muscle growth, but what really causes muscle growth is mechanical tension. And for anyone that's not familiar with what that actually means, it's the involuntary slowing of, let's say, the speed of the bar. So if you're doing a squat or a bench press, as that set gets tougher and tougher, and you need to do 10 reps, and you're on number 7, and that bar is not moving as fast, the degree of mechanical tension is much higher. That is what elicits hypertrophy or strength gains. So I can have you do 10 reps, Danny, and the time under tension is whatever it is, but the load lifted is minimal. Therefore, you're not going to see results. But then I can give you the exact same time under tension, and I can have a sufficient load where it's going to elicit hypertrophy and it's perfect. So I think time under tension is very valuable. I like it as a way of training safely and as a way of emphasizing that eccentric or that lengthening contraction. I feel like it's typically undervalued. So I prescribe TUT to all of my clients. But what they fail to acknowledge is a concept called TUST, time under significant tension. So if you're not getting that significant tension, you're not going to get results. So for instance, if you're doing a 10 repetition maximum on the bench press, not every repetition is going to go towards a hypertrophy response. It's usually the last 4 reps that cause it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned, I think it was the 5x5 program. If you're doing 5 repetition max, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all reps that you're creating significant tension. So that's why sometimes it works for certain people. Sometimes people are more kind of fast switch dominant and do prefer that lower repetition bracket. But I think it is important also to fluctuate, because if you're all like your intensities, and how I define intensity is the percentage of load lifted. So if someone's lifting, let's say at 90% intensity, they're going to be doing maybe 1, 2, 3 repetitions. Very high intensity training. If you're always doing that, you're lifting high loads, and it's a lot, and typically that's where people are going to get injured. So you need to fluctuate your training. So sometimes it would be valuable to go up to 15, 20 repetitions, just because the intensity of the training is lower.
And when you're saying 15 to 20, are you talking about within the same workout, or doing phases? Like I'll do a couple of weeks of 5x5s, and then I'll do a couple of weeks of maybe higher rep and kind of go back and forth? Or is it mixed in within the same workout? Like I'll do a couple exercises that are lower rep, a couple exercises that are higher rep.
So my preference would be kind of block style periodization, where you dedicate 4 to 6 weeks to a certain intensity of training. So I like to put it into either an accumulation phase, which the stress of that accumulation phase is the volume, the repetitions done. And I generally will start people out with accumulation phases, because when you have repetition, you have opportunities to perfect the quality of repetition. And the better someone gets at good repetitions, we can then progress into another phase, which would be more called intensification, where the stress of this program is based on the intensity or the percentage of load lifted. So when we've got a bit more volume, then we switch them here where we have lower repetitions, higher loads or higher intensities lifted. But we can't stay in this phase for too long either. So then we would go back again to another accumulation phase where the stress is volume again. But for instance, the accumulation one might be 12 to 15 reps. But by the time we get back around to it again, it might be 8 to 10 reps.
Gotcha. Okay.
One thing I would also add, Danny, is when people say high intensity training, a lot of people aren't actually doing high intensity training. And one of the more popular kind of high intensity protocols out there is Tabata or Tabata, depending on where in the world you're living. And that's 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 times. The problem with that is we look at the work to rest ratio of that. You're working for 20 seconds, you're resting for 10. So it's a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. You might be working hard, but how you define intensity is, percentage of effort or load lifted. The effort is quite low. So I would consider Tabata or Tabata a moderate or even low intensity interval training. If you wanted to do high intensity interval training, the work would be much less than the rest.
Okay.
Because
and you
need to
bought
rest
those assault bikes.
Yep.
And it's the one with it's just the fan. So the faster you pedal, the more resistance you're getting. And she had me do, I think it was that 20 seconds all out, 10-second rest. And I did a couple of those, and it was it was brutal. Then I tried doing just 10-second all out with 20-second rest, and your heart's just pounding out of your chest. You're just drenched in sweat. But I'm wondering if that's more. Could it just be that that's more beneficial from a cardio perspective? Maybe has a very little hypertrophy impact, but just from a cardio perspective, it could be used.
Yeah, so you make a really good point. Depending on the work to rest ratio will influence the adaptations that take place. So I think when we're at let's say a 1-to-1, a 2-to-1, or even like let's say a 1-to-3 work to rest, generally the adaptations are more cardiovascular in nature, more neuromuscular endurance or capacity and so on. And the greater the rest interval goes in comparison to the work interval, then we might be getting more of an anaerobic benefit, or let's say a power benefit. If you wanted to train the quality of power rather than capacity, you need the rest interval to be much greater. But with saying that, if you're doing, let's say, 10 seconds on, 90 seconds off, that might be a more effective way of depleting muscle glycogen. Because if we're doing 20 on, 10 off, okay, we look at the fuel being used there, it might more be fatty acids and oxygen. So again, it comes back to the benefit. When someone's stuck for time, I would typically preference HIIT training. So we could do, let's say, 10 seconds on, 50 off, 10 times, 10 minutes of work. And what is that? So we look at the work to rest ratio there. It's quite an efficient way to spend your time rather than hopping on a treadmill or an elliptical for 25, 30, even 60 minutes.
So these type of bikes, can they be used for hypertrophy, to say, I'm going to use this bike to help develop muscle in my legs, or do you really just want to hit the weights for that? Because I see all these cyclists that whiz by my house, and they're all got these jacked legs, and they're all on these bikes. So I'm like, they must be doing something that's causing some kind of leg development, unless they're all back at the gym doing squats and lunges and whatever else. But can legs be developed, let's say, on a bike like that?
I would say yes, it can, but it also depends, on the intervals that you're doing. If you're doing long distance endurance, that's not going to be as productive to hypertrophy than interval training. So I wouldn't consider it optimal if you're looking for leg development to hop onto a bike, but I suppose you could, in theory, use it. But if you were going to use it, I would be doing high intensity intervals, where the effort is very, very high, and you get sufficient amounts of recovery in order to go high amounts of effort again. Okay, but when it comes to hypertrophy training, you need to create mechanical tension that can be done through bodyweight exercise, but sometimes people are so strong with bodyweight exercises that they require a lot of repetitions. That's generally where we need heavier loads, because we can get that training effect with more efficiency with our timing.
So like in 1 minute all out, and then take the 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it is to kind of recover, and then go another 1 minute all out.
I wouldn't even say that work interval is still too long. I think the benefits there will be more aerobic capacity in nature than hypertrophy.
So what would be the approach for hypertrophy, just out of sake of curiosity?
Yeah, I might do 10, 15, even 20 seconds on, 2 minutes off, 8 to 9 times.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
I would want enough recovery that they can reproduce that high effort bout again and again and again. If the rest is too low, they're not going to be able to reproduce enough force, and then the adaptation is more aerobic in nature. Okay,
gotcha. The guys that were brought up 5x5s earlier, and I do have a couple of friends doing that. The guys doing 5x5s, and girls obviously, or women. I'm sorry, girls. Is there? Would you say that pretty much covers everything? There's one friend of mine that was doing 5x5s, and he stopped because he's like, I want to have direct work on my biceps or direct work on my triceps. It's all indirect work. Yeah, my back was getting bigger and my quads are getting bigger, but I found my arms were lacking or whatever else. Would you say 5x5 should potentially cover all the bases?
So when it comes to 5x5, there's nothing magical about it. Essentially, one of the reasons why it's so effective is because someone's going into the gym, they're doing a big bang for your buck movement, maybe like a squat or a deadlift or a bench or a chin-up. So they're multi-joint movements. They're using a lot of skeletal muscle mass, but they're not really using one specific tissue to a massive degree. They're just working the whole kind of body systemically. So when time is an issue, I think it's fantastic. But the thing is, then we have, let's say, individual body types. Sometimes when people are squatting, because of their tibia to femur length, that their quads might grow immensely. And then we've got some people that have really, really long femurs. When they squat, they don't feel on their quads, they feel on their back. Or for instance, if someone's benching, they might have long arms compared to let's say, shorter arms. So it's going to influence what's working. Is your triceps, is your chest working? So I think when it comes to those 5x5 workouts, or any workout, it needs to be specific. Okay, we need to evaluate what muscles you're feeling, what muscles are getting worked the most, and then usually with most 5x5 or other programs like that, you've got your big bag for your buck movement, and then later on the workout, you've got your accessories. Your accessory movements are going to be the movements that are going to improve your main lift, like your squat, your deadlift, because you're going to have weaker body parts for whatever reason. It could be because the sport you played when you were younger, that you had imbalances, or it could be just that your lever lengths, structure, your genetics. So I think when it comes to those supplementary movements, I think it's totally fine to add in some, isolation work, biceps, shoulders, calves, whatever it is, to bring up your weak points. Because again, if you want to grow a muscle group, you need mechanical tension, you need adequate volume and frequency. So for people that are, let's say, complaining about their arm growth, well, maybe the way you do a chin-up or the way you do a bench or a push-up is not going to be substantial for your body length or your distributions.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I think we covered quite a bit there.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you again for your time, Rob.
Cheers, Danny.